Our scripture this evening comes from a familiar passage of scripture. It is found in Luke chapter 10, verses 29 through 30. 29 through 37. Luke chapter 10, verses 29 through 37. As you're turning to Luke chapter 10, finding the story there of the Good Samaritan, we recognize that we are in a time in which people are very polarized. Unfortunate events that have unfolded in our country over the last few days have people talking, texting, giving commentary. People are expressing their political ideologies, their thoughts about everything under the sun. But this recent murder, some call it an assassination, has certainly galvanized the nation to at least have a conversation. But how healthy that conversation is another question. How do we address differences with people? We are morally at odds with others. Politically, we are polarized. Socially, people are miles apart. And religiously, people are just all over the place. Some promote the concept of tolerance. But does tolerance really help us to have unity and to overcome our differences and to work together for the greater good? Let's learn some things from the story in Luke 10, starting at verse number 29. It says, "But he, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, 'And who is my neighbor?' Then Jesus answered and said, 'A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. And he set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, 'Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you.' So which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves?" And he said, "He who showed mercy on him." I did not read the last part of verse 37 just to emphasize a thought before we read it. That is, we are familiar with the story of the Good Samaritan, but rarely do we look at the very last part of verse 37. Then Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." In other words, this is not a story designed to simply be read to critique. This is not a story to be read simply as a narrative in the Bible. It is designed to be a guide to how we are to conduct ourselves in our dealings with others. Gordon Lindsay talks about the polarization between the Jews and Samaritans. And he says in Jesus' time, this was as severe as any polarization in our time. The shortest distance between Galilee and Jerusalem led through Samaria. But to avoid contact with the despised Samaritans, Galilean Jews would cross over the Jordan River and travel down its east bank and then cross over the river again at Jericho and take the arduous uphill road to Jerusalem. Well, that's a lot of traveling, a lot of effort, just to avoid someone you don't like. What we see in this story is the very idea that though Jews and Samaritans did not get along, what is interesting is they did have some things in common. First of all, both Jews and Samaritans both worshiped God. Second, Jews and Samaritans both accepted the 5 books of the Bible at that time. The emphasis were on the books of Moses, and they both accepted them as authoritative scriptures. They may have a difference of views on where to worship, maybe even how, but they believed in God and they believed in the authority of the scriptures. A part of what helps us to deal with others is the recognizing that we have things in common, but we tend to let what we don't have in common to divide us. We must see 3 things that are evident in this story. And again, remembering the very last part of verse 37, for us to go and do likewise. Number 1, we see the Samaritan loving a person who is different than himself. It is most unfortunate that people think that we can only love people who look like us, who talk like us, who think like us. One of the things that makes our lives so great is the fact that we can surround ourselves with people who offer a variety of skin colors, ethnicities, but also a variety of perspectives, a variety of ways of seeing life. It doesn't make us less of a person to engage and interact with someone who's different from us. It makes us a more informed person. It makes us a more respectable person. It makes us a more mature person. We not only see the idea that they loved one another, at least to the extent that this Samaritan demonstrated love and not just communicated it, but we also see compassion. He was merciful about what was going on in the life of this wounded individual. He saw it. In fact, the Bible teaches us that he took mercy on this man. This was a personal sacrifice, but it was an act of compassion. When we look at people, we may have different experiences. We may not have all had the same life stories, but what impacts others should cause us to tap into the bowels of mercy within us. We have to be sensitive what other people have dealt with, just as we want them to be sensitive to what we deal with. We must be on guard for the fact that other people may have pains that we cannot understand or experiences that we've never experienced, but certainly we can have compassion even when our life experiences are not consistently the same as others. We must respect the fact, number 3, that care for individuals supersedes differences that we may have. You look at how the Samaritan took care of this person. He not only helped him with his wounds, but he got him to what we might consider a motel, and he made sure that the guy would be taken care of. I recognize that we all have our political ideologies. We may have a political party, position, or personality that we subscribe to. But I do not believe and cannot find in the Bible where God is looking for any political institution, or any institution for that matter, to be the light of the world. He's looking for his people to be the light. And we can't be that light simply because of what we preach and teach. We must obey the words of Luke 10 and 37, where it doesn't say go and preach it or teach it. It says, go and do likewise. If you want to make the world a better place, don't just preach it, practice it. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.